How are you doing? Welcome to the third hour of Kenya's biggest conversation, The Situation Room, live on SpiceFM on KTN Home. And we're having an issue with our live stream today, but we'll be sorting it out shortly. We'll be live streaming as well. Our engineers are working on our signal in Kisumu and the environs. We'll also tell you when that is sorted. We'll be back online there as well. We have a guest in the studio, a member of Senate from Narok County. We'll be having a conversation with him. Before we welcome him and let him say hello to everybody, let's hear today's ancient Egyptian proverb. One does not run to reach success. One does not move to spoil it. One does not run to reach success. One does not move to spoil it. Senator LEDAMA Lekina.
Good morning.
Yarosaba.
Sabaling.
Umesikiaje hiyo proverb?
So what do? You crawl?
One does not run.
Do you crawl? Do you
reach
pray?
Success.
What do? You take your time.
Take your time.
Get there slowly.
Yeah.
Success comes over time.
And I think also success comes to those who work hard at it.
Yes.
Maybe smart. But I believe that if you're focused, it can be translated as running. Yeah. Because you get there faster than anyone else.
Because you're focused.
Yes.
But also, so it means that you've done a lot more to take care of the time element.
Yes.
You've put in a lot more effort.
Absolutely.
One does not run to reach success. Once you've reached success, one does not move to spoil it.
In Masai, we say, me tumoto na gol, barata. It means that it is not getting there that matters. It is maintaining or being there that matters.
Staying there.
Staying there.
Good to see you again, Senator. Congratulations on your re-election.
Thank you
by
very
the people
much.
of Narok County.
Thank you very much. I thank the people of Narok County for having trust in me and giving me an opportunity to continue serving them. Yes.
You've come with that rungu in the studio.
Yes, of course.
You know, with this
And I've
studio,
changed it actually. You see, this one has this one has a piece of metal here that can crush you. So don't mess with me.
So this is a weapon.
This one, it's a rungu. It's not a weapon. It depends on how you use it.
It is a weapon.
Is that right? So be it.
Why are you putting a metal thing on it and saying, don't joke with me? That's a weapon.
Because you protect yourself. You don't attack anybody. You protect yourself with this one. We call it Orinkalo Seyenge. Yes.
Senator, you used a similar one. Maybe you broke the other one.
No, I didn't. Actually, if you have your eyes, you should have seen it properly. That we don't use that rungu to hit anybody. I was hit using very weird instruments or furniture. So when I was defending myself, it happened to just crack. It had a crack, actually. So that piece of the head came out. So it's not that I was hitting anybody with. Trust me. If it was about a fight.
You were shielding yourself from a chair.
Absolutely. You have to defend yourself.
Right.
Yeah. How do you do when you're attacked by over 20 legislators?
Especially when you've moved to the dais.
I mean, it doesn't matter. It's my democratic right to be able to seek clarification. There is nothing I did wrong. And whoever think I did something wrong, bring it on. Yeah. I think, one thing that people need to understand is that we have three arms of government. We have the executive that has the sword, but parliament has the purse, and judiciary has the power of judgment. So it is called separation of powers. It was envisioned by the framers of the Constitution, or those ones who came up with the presidential system, so that it can produce a check and balance system. So don't think because you have the sword, you are the alpha and omega. You're not. We have to be clever. And I think in the 21st century, you've seen how Kenyans are very peaceful. We held an election. There was a peaceful transfer of power. And we move on. And I think that's what people need to understand, that you cannot go on threatening people. No, you shouldn't threaten anybody. Everyone has a right. And where your rights end, the other person's rights begin. So really, in this country, we just need to learn to trust each other. I like what I'm hearing from everybody. They say that they like people who are candid, people who can talk and speak the truth. I believe even Rigathi Gachagua said he speaks the truth. I believe even the president said that he wants to be criticized. He wants the opposition.
He wants to be checked.
He wants to be checked. But I don't really know whether he understands that we are not in a Westminster kind of government. We're in a presidential system of government where the legislative arm of government ought to be the one checking, not the opposition. It's the entire parliament. But I do hope that his advisors will be able to school him a little better for him to understand that we do have...
so the entire parliament...
The entire parliament
should be the one that's providing the checks and balances to the executive.
Actually, no. It should be the one that is oversighting the executive, not providing the check and balances. Because the check and balances is in the three arms of government. It is the one which ought to... Oversight, because it's the one that is giving the president money. This is what people don't understand. You know, whenever I hear the president saying that I'm giving the judiciary 3 billion shillings, I wonder where that money comes from. But because we are naive as Kenyans, we are quite gullible. We tend to believe that the president has all the powers. Just like we try to believe that the governors have all the powers. No, they don't. The power belongs to parliament. The power belongs to the assemblies. They are the ones. If you look at the constitution, and if we go through the budget making process in parliament, we begin with a budget policy statement, which is presented by the executive through the treasury. So we go through it, we understand how they want to spend the money. Then, of course, we come now into the issue of division of revenue, taking into consideration Article 203 of the Constitution. Then when we go through that, we now divide the money. We set aside what is supposed to be set aside under Article 203, which I invite Kenyans to be able to look and read it. And then now we divide the money. Parliament divides the money. The two houses of Parliament divides the money.
They know exactly how much money
they
is
know
going to
how much
function.
No, they don't. That's the problem. We divide the money advised by the Commission of Revenue Allocation. So when we divide the money, we say X amount of money goes to the executive and X amount of money goes to what? To the county government. You remember the debate we had where we voted for over 11 times. We divided the money. We gave county government 370 billion. Then the Senate now sits and divide that 370 billion
per
county. Also based on advice by the Commission of Revenue Allocation. There's a formula that we fought so hard to be able to pass.
So Parliament has a lot of work that it
Parliament
ought to be
has
doing
a lot of power.
as a collective. This is the third Parliament under this new constitution. Okay? We saw the 11th Parliament, we saw the 12th Parliament, and we saw how the performance of the 11th and the 12th Parliament in terms of was the Parliament collectively providing that oversight, playing its oversight role to the executive or not. Let's start with the 11th Parliament because you are not a member of that one.
It hasn't. And I think that's where I think now we have come of age, and I want to beseech my colleagues and also call upon Kenyans to be able to encourage us to be bold enough for us to remember that Parliament is not an extension of the executive. You know, we represent our people. And I want to call upon assemblies, because from the 11th Parliament, the 12th Parliament, the 13th Parliament, I hope now in the 13th Parliament, we can make some changes. Because in the 12th Parliament, we tried.
Did you?
We did. We did.
Example?
We tried. When it comes to the issue of the revenue formula, we triumphed. We did. We won. It was a big battle. You know, we gave in here and there, and sometimes the Maasai says that one finger does not kill a lie. But, you know, we tried as much as we could. I know we failed. We failed when it comes to the issue of the debt ceiling. We did. I know we failed when it came to the issue of the BBI. Some of us were cornered. I mean, but you see, the good thing is that the digital print doesn't always forget.
Your record is clear.
Your record is clear. You
There
follow
for
through
posterity.
and follow and follow and follow and see where someone is. But the thing is, I want to go back to what I was saying. I hope that the general public now will start taking us to task and saying that, Senator LEDAMA, I did not elect you to become an extension of the executive. I elected you so that when you are carrying out the division of revenue, you can lobby, you can speak to your MPs or your members of the National Assembly, so that when the budget is being passed, there's money being put in there for a project in Narrow County.
I hear what you're saying.
And
because I think we started kicking off this conversation about participatory governance and saying that, look, you were on the campaign trail. There's certain things you said that you were going to do. There were certain things that you said you were going to follow up on for people to then come out and say, all right, Senator, you said that you were going to do this. You said that you were going to lobby people to do one, two, or the other.
Yes.
At the current moment, it does seem, though, that if there are two sides, right, that one side is still smarting from a general election loss, as it were. And then there's another side that is now lobbying or, pushing for, representation then when it comes to these juicy seats in government, as it were. And the question is already being asked that how do we participate in this? How do we form a part of this governance if the folks who are supposed to be pushing it are really concerned about other things which on the long run may not matter?
I think the biggest problem is that we are, as legislators, we are compromised. All of us are guilty, as charged. Because when you find what is happening, for instance, and I'll be very honest, and I stand corrected where I'm wrong. If you look at how the Azimio coalition attempted, because it's not yet over yet, attempted to divide the leadership in the House. They were trying, Raila Amolo Odinga was trying to be magnanimous in trying to accommodate all the coalition partners. Despite the fact that one partner, has the majority, which is also another big question. That is something that we're going to be arguing and talking about it. But when you look at our opponents, only one political party took every position. So what does that tell you? I'm not a prophet, but this is what I'm foreseeing coming. One, the other political parties which are teamed up with UDA will feel disfranchised, and they will start walking away. And one of the things that Kenyans ought to understand is that, there's a rule of law. The Political Parties Act or the Register of Political Parties have got a lot of power in that whatever agreement that was reached between the Azimio coalition partners, there are rules and regulations. What am I saying? That you cannot just easily say, just because UDA has made up the government, you can just now walk over there and to be considered as part of UDA. No. The agreement that you signed, and a lot of people don't understand, and this is something that we Maasais are now wiser, because we'll sell our land, and then later on you keep your cows there saying, this is my land. But then you're told, hey,
you signed here. You signed the
here.
rights to this land.
So what has happened is that our partners, like my good friend, who is now actually in New York, I've just seen a picture on Twitter, the former governor of Machakos, Alfred Mutua, he signed an agreement. And then also my other friend, Amason Kingi, signed an agreement with Azimio. Then what did they decide? And then the other gentleman from Northern Kenya, from UDM, signed an agreement with Azimio. In that agreement, they should not tell us that they did not read the fine print. The fine print stated as follows, that if any member wants to leave the coalition, cannot do so until 3 months after the election.
Yep.
And even in 3 months after the elections, that is the only time that they'll give 3 months notice. So in essence,
6
it means
months
that
after the election.
in 6 months' time, whether you like it or not, you are still part and parcel
Of the coalition.
Of the coalition.
All right.
It all boils down
Are
to
you
the
bound
issue.
to vote always with the coalition?
You see, the coalition can...
Because, for instance...
okay, there are two things. You're right. That's a very good question. And it's a question that can be looked at in all different ways. One, I think there are consequences. Because you're supposed to subscribe to the same school of thoughts. That's the reason why you signed up. So there are consequences. And I think those are the consequences that we need to look at. There's disciplinary action that can be taken, you know? So whether we are bold enough to be able to effect the disciplinary actions, whether we are bold enough so that we can have people who are able to face these people and say, gentlemen, you're guilty. And these are the penalties. You can be penalized.
Okay.
So really, those are the things that we're looking at. But I think the conversation today was, and I had an issue with it, but I said, let me come and let's talk about it.
The role of opposition.
The role
in,
of opposition,
in Kenyan
because I
politics,
don't
or the
think,
role of minority in
you know,
Kenyan politics.
I don't think we really have an opposition in Kenya. We might theoretically act as if we're an opposition, but in essence, and I want to beseech Kenyans and my colleagues to look at it this way. We have three arms of government. Either we go into a referendum and we decide to go the Westminster way, or we agree that we have three arms of government. We have the person with the sword.
So we have
the person with the pass.
We have a parliament, and this parliament does not have a ruling and opposition. It has majority and minority in parliament.
Yes.
All right? And so it's supposed to operate as an independent unit.
Body, yes.
What is the role or play of the party that is controlling the executive in having its members in parliament?
I think
what is the effect of that?
I think when you put it that way, the party that has got the majority in parliament will always want to ensure that the policies and the wishes or the asks of the executive are fulfilled. You know?
Right.
Because they were sponsored by that political party into parliament.
And they sold a,
but I think
they sold a manifesto that is...
They have a manifesto, yes. But how realistic is that manifesto? You see, the problem I've always had with budgets, and this is what I hope this time around, I can be able to demystify the role of an MCA and the role of a member of parliament and also the role of a senator to the general public. Because ideally, if you have a line item budget where it says we'll spend 6 billion or 60 billions in roads, which roads? So let's go down and say 60 billions in roads. Okay, let's break it down. I want 20 billion in Narok County. Okay, and also when it comes to Narok County, where? You know, I want it in this ward, in this ward, in this ward, in this ward. That is the way we are going to be able to uplift our people.
So, back to my question, Senator, you have this time, the executive is led by UDA.
Yes, it
the
is.
president and the deputy president are UDA. You've got very many members in the National Assembly who are UDA and others who are part of the Kenya Kwanza coalition. What is the link between the executive headed by UDA and the party leader and the members of the UDA and the Kenya Kwanza coalition in the National Assembly?
I think the link is very simple. The Kenya Kwanza coalition and UDA are the ones that sponsored the executive.
Okay.
So, you know, in layman's terms, they would want to ensure that they fulfill the wishes of the president.
By fulfilling the wishes of the president...
is by making sure that whatever the president wants, passes.
The president gets.
The president gets. But what about if the president just wants to support one part of the country and leave the other part of the country? Where is their personal conscience?
All right. So where should they have that conversation?
You know, I think there are two things that is happening. They should have that conversation with the rest. You know, in the Senate, right now, you had asked a very important question. In the Senate, unlike the National Assembly, we are guided by delegations. Article 123 of the Constitution states as follows, not verbatim, but you can actually look into it, that voting is done by delegations. And there are 47 delegations. Nominated senators do not vote. They have no vote. You know, they are part of a delegation. The head of the delegation is the person who is elected. So what my prayer is that these delegations should know that as a Senate, it is a house of union. It doesn't matter whether you have 100,000 voters in Lamu and 1 million voters in Nairobi or 800,000 voters in Nairobi. There's only one senator and one senator. So when you are discussing issues, you should first of all, put the interest of your political party behind and put the interest of your people ahead. Because when you go to Lamu or you come to Nairobi, there are people who voted for Azimio and there are those people who voted for UDA. So even if the majority wants, you still need 24 votes. You need 24 votes for you to pass. Because you have to pass with a simple majority, which is you need 24 delegations for you to pass. You cannot pass, in the National Assembly it's different. Because in the National Assembly it could be by voice, it could be by a simple majority of the number who are there. But in the Senate, it is strictly 24 votes minimum.
Yeah.
Just like in the committees, it has to be a minimum of 5 members. So here's what I'm saying. Granted, there could be a situation where, and this is very different because if you go back in history in this country, there was a time when ODM had the majority of members of parliament, but they were not the ones who formed the government. PNU formed the government.
Yep.
So there was a lot of negotiations back and forth. I know what is happening right now in this country. This country is divided into two. Unless you are a radical like I am, when it comes to freedom and liberties, where you push for sometimes even for secession, what you could be praying for is for us to be able to accommodate each other. And as legislators who are tasked with the oversight mandate, what we need to do is to agree to disagree.
Is it really
because
possible?
Eric, if you represent, hypothetically, if you represent Baringo and I represent Narok, what we need to sit down and say, hey, Eric, what are the needs of the people of Baringo? Not
irrespective of what the party
of what
and all.
party they have.
But is that possible,
Is it possible?
Senator?
You know
we
what?
have not
Nothing
seen it.
is possible.
We have not seen it. We
Nothing
didn't even
is
see
possible.
it in the 12th Parliament.
Nothing
You told
is
us
possible.
you had your own way of thinking on particular matters, but because of party position and the leadership of the party, you had
Went
to
a
vote in a
certain
certain way. So is that really possible to say that,
I
all
think
the
now,
UDA
to
members
tell
of
you the
Parliament
truth,
are going to be independent? Really?
I think now, if you were to ask me, LEDAMA or KINA, I think I'm wiser now. I'm not the fool that I used to be. I'm wiser now. And the interest of my people and the people of Kenya supersedes my own interest or the interest of my party. I can tell you that.
Okay.
Without any fear of contradiction.
Let's take a break. We'll continue the conversation shortly. Senator LEDAMA or KINA, the senator for Narok County, is here with us in the Situation Room this morning, live on SpiceFM. We're live streaming the show now on YouTube and Facebook. And we're also live on KTN Home.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Say LEDAMA or KINA. They start with LEDAMA.
I love it. It's all right. I accept it. Any way you call my name. Yeah.
It doesn't change the meaning?
Shakespeare, what did Shakespeare say? What's in the name?
Well,
that's what's called a rose. It still smells this.
rose.
So really, it's just a name.
All right. We're talking about the future of opposition politics in Kenya, because Kenyans know opposition.
Eric, we need to correct that. We need
And
to...
the future of the... You know why I'm saying we're also saying opposition politics? Because the BBI was attempting to bring this back and saying, the leader of the official opposition in parliament and all those matters of things.
Exactly. Okay.
So the future of opposition politics in Kenya, the future of knowing that there's a majority and there's a minority. What's the strength of the minority and what's the support of the minority? You have, of course, reminded us the Constitution we have a presidential system. Parliament is parliament, and parliament should focus independently on oversighting the executive, legislating, and also doing what's the other thing? Representing the people. And then the executive does the job of running the executive arm of government. The judiciary, of course, we know that's where you go for justice. Now, with the kind of scenario that we end up seeing, you have a UDA president, you have very many members in the National Assembly, for instance, and in the Senate belonging to UDA and to Kenya Kwanza. Is it really possible for us to see the 13th Parliament being independent and somebody like Kimani Ichung'wah being the leader of the majority can actually stand up and tell the executive, no, what you've brought before the House cannot fly?
No, because that's not how we are made. In Kenya, we are made to become slaves of the executive, particularly if it is the executive that has sponsored you in power. We are also made to become slaves, maybe because we want to be able to get so many goodies for our people so that we can also continue, sort of like lining our pocket and amassing a lot of wealth. But I think this could actually be a blessing in disguise. What we recently had from Ruto and his government, where I think they are attempting, and in this time around, anything is possible. If Chebukati would be able to decide that he can be the constitution himself and change the election date for the two counties, that is
Mombasa and
Kakamega.
and Kakamega, when it is quite explicit in the constitution that the elections shall be held on a particular day, the same day as the election of the president, where you've got to carry out your due diligence to make sure that when you have to abide by the constitution, nothing is impossible with this new kind
anything
of
is possible.
Anything is possible. And let me tell you why. They could just maybe decide that cabinet secretaries would be appearing before Parliament. And the moment they do that,
The president has already
he's already said that. And the moment he does that, and I think his advisors ought to advise him properly. The moment he does that, he violates the constitution. That's number one. Number two, if he does that, he's got also to realize that we now need to have shadow cabinet secretaries who can also be able to change that. So in a way, through the back door, we'll bring the Westminster kind of parliament, system into this country, where now your argument on the future of the position will now hold water. Because now, when you have cabinet secretaries coming to the floor of the House to answer questions, then by design, there'll be shadow cabinet secretaries.
So are we saying that the opposition, in the way in which it is currently constituted, as it were, then doesn't really work, or it doesn't really provide an adequate opposition in the manner in which it was previously thought of?
What we ought to do is to oversight government. The National Assembly oversights the executive, the national government. The Senate oversights counties, and that is what we're going to be doing. And I have to tell you, some of us were a little bit on the slow, maybe because of the environment back then. But I think now when you hear certain discussions, and because also of our future aspirations, you want to be able to play your role critically so that you can be able to support Kenyans in general. So I'll give you some very practical examples. Today you hear the UDA fraternity arguing that there's no money in this country. And you hear the Deputy President Gachagua saying that KRA needs to be a friend of businesses.
Yeah.
I agree. KRA needs to be a friend of businesses. But I think also we need to have a conversation. And we need to be able to develop a Gantt chart on the flow of money. I'll use Narok County as a very good example. If we're serious and we are candid enough, we can be able to account for every single penny that gets into Narok County. Every single penny. And KRA, once we sit down and have this conversation, in fact, I'm seeking a conversation with 3 bodies, just 3. That is the Tourism Levy Fund, KRA, and myself. Let's sit down. Let me show you how you can be able to ensure that you get all your money in time. Because if, when you look at Narok County as an example, we collect a lot of dollars from the Masai Mara Game Reserve. It is ours, and it's never going to leave us. It is ours. It is our land that we set aside. So the national government can never claim it. Amboseli for Kajiado went. But Narrow County will fight for ours, and it remains ours. However, we still have an obligation. I'll give you some very basic mathematics, and I hope you have your calculator there. In Narrow County today, if we have 3 tourists, who end up living in, let's say, Serena.
Yep.
They go to Serena in the Masai Mara Game Reserve for 3 nights. They will pay Narrow County, each one of them will pay Narrow County $80 a day. So if you do 80 times 3 is how much?
240.
240 times 3 is what?
A lot of money.
No, come on, do your math.
720.
720. Now, 720. These 3 people have paid $720
For 3 days.
for 3 days
Yep.
to stay in the Mara.
Yeah.
That money belongs to Narrow County government. CAPS, which collect revenue on behalf of Narrow County, will take a maximum of 10%. So how much will they get? Do your math. So $72.
$72, yes.
All right. So these people, when they go to the Mara, they will spend a minimum of $500 a night. Times 3 nights is how much? 1,500.
1,500.
1,500 times 3 is what?
4,500.
4,500. Take 16% of VAT alone, or 4,500. How much does that give you?
Well, okay.
Say $720. So whatever amount that Maro County got, KRA will also be able to get the same amount. And then there's also 2%, which goes to the tourism levy. We'll also be able to get that. If we have that conversation and we sit down, there's absolutely no reason as to why a member of parliament from Narrow County cannot now come and say, gentlemen, in Narrow County, we contribute X amount of money in one source alone to the Kenya revenue. Since this money is now being shared across the whole country, can you please ensure that all the roads in the park are good? All the roads in Narok are also good? Can you ensure that our hospitals have been built? You know,
so
when
what
you look
I'm hearing you say then is that if that conversation is elevated to that level, it shouldn't be a matter of who is on what side or the other.
It shouldn't.
And so with that example, what we're essentially saying is that it is possible for there to be concert when it comes to legislation, and it's not necessary then to have this opposition.
I think the only time that we can have an opposition is if we decide to change our system of governance. Because then in that case, you know, the minority will always form the opposition. They will be able to check and say, no, this is bullshit. What you said you'll do, you did not do. You know, but when we are all together now, I mean, the 12th parliament, Mutule Kilonzo, Sakaja, myself, Murkomen, we would sit down and agree and say, gentlemen, we are all from different political parties, but can we put the interest of our country ahead? And we did that. We showed. So now, right now, what is happening in Kenya, and I think we need to be candid enough to have this conversation, is that currently governors are busy buying MCAs so that they can be able to control who becomes the speaker. A wise governor shouldn't need to do that. He should just let the MCAs, and even wiser MCAs should not allow that, because, I mean, what is in money? You are given 100,000, 200,000, you become a slave of the governor.
So you allow them to run the show.
You allow them to run. No, listen. But let us now practice this independence of institutions.
So, is there a need for the parties and the coalitions to first of all even be holding the meetings that we saw them holding this weekend?
Absolutely, there is.
What is the need of that?
It is important.
Because when you meet as Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition, and then the other guys meet as Kenya Kwanza, we saw, you're being told this is our thinking in the house.
It is good.
When you go and meet in the house, then you have
It is
already
good. No.
you have positions taken.
Those positions are necessary. What you do is that you bring them, you argue, you debate. Okay, you agree to disagree. But ultimately, what should be driving you is that you are an elected member of parliament. Your job is to make sure that you represent your people. You know, we are soon having a by-election, and maybe even many by-elections.
Yeah.
In fact, if IBC would listen to me, they don't really like me a lot, but
No.
you know, it's always good to like your critic. You know, person who criticizes you should actually bring them much closer. so that you get to know, because they will always have something to prove.
You're
If
their
they- if-
chief whip.
if they would listen to me, I would think they should hold off on the Bungoma by-election. They wait until the president unveil his cabinet, because I'm sure people like in Duale, people like in Murkomen, other people also, maybe I may not, who are in parliament, might decide to join the executive. So there'll be a lot of
By-elections
by-elections.
coming.
So just wait. There's no rush. Okay? So even if it is next year, I know Chebukati has got, I think, 3 months to go. Someone else can be able to run those elections. It doesn't have to be Chebukati. But I think now what Kenyans need to do is that they need to start asking questions, because the cost of unga has gone up. The cost of fuel has skyrocketed. The cost of life, in essence, has gone up the sky. So the sense that we need to live, the time that God is kind enough to give us to live in this world, we need to care about our people.
What should Kenyans do
I think
so that they can
Kenyans
get
now-
more value from their elected leaders across the
Kenyans
board?
now need to forget about these bribes. And I'm very grateful. Let me tell you, I'm very, very grateful for the people of Narok County. And this is why I will serve them diligently. Because they never asked me for a penny. There's not a single day where people came in and asked me to give them money. They just elected me. They believed in me. God blessed
Did you
me.
give money even without being asked?
No. But if I call you to come to my home, I'll spend money. I'll slaughter a few bulls.
Yeah.
And sometimes, because
Provide
I've inconvenienced you, I'll pay
facilitation.
the transport. I'll facilitate for the transport. But it's not that I go everywhere and I say, shikai, shikai, shikai. No, that's BS. What is there? Kenyans, you've asked a very good question. What do we need to do? And I want to speak to the people in Bungoma. You are now going to be electing your new senator. I will actually go to Bungoma and have a conversation with the youth. Because my purpose in this position that I now hold is to ensure that our people, our women and girls, men, young boys, also can be able to rise up to become senators like LEDAMA. They too can also be able to serve this country. So how do you serve this country? You have to be candid. You have to be fearless. You also have to be caring. You need to care about your brother. You must be your brother's keeper. You must make sure that if LEDAMA can have a toilet that he can flush it, even a child in Bungoma can also be able to have the same toilet. The kind of life that our people in the rural areas live. Right now, you don't see us politicians running up and down. But during the election period, we are there every day.
Yeah.
We even go and enter their rooms.
Right.
We even sleep there. We go eat with them in their supermarket, in their kiosks. We drink their tea. But immediately we have what we want, we take off. So I think right now, all of us should also ask ourselves various questions. The reason why our children can go to good school is because of the poor Kenyans who vote for us, who are jobless. So everything we do, and I do hope that the current administration or the current occupier of State House can be able to allow criticism and positive criticism, because we are all different. The way I see life is not the way you see life, Eric. It's different.
You have to be various
You know,
angles.
we have to be various angles. So going back to your question about Parliament, how should Parliament operate, is that I know my role. And I'll borrow the word opposition because I've also used it, because that's what Kenyans know, and I agree with you. But in hindsight, the more you think about it, the more you realize that really we shouldn't have an opposition. What we should have is a body that controls the purse that it has, to ensure that that purse is distributed, what is contained inside is distributed equitably.
So do I hear you saying, as somebody who was firmly on the other side, firmly so, and it was visible, that then there is an opportunity to work with the government, the executive, work with?
Let me try to break it down for you. My role as a member of Parliament is to ensure that I oversight the executive. I'm not going to be working with the executive. I'm going to be oversighting everything they say they do. I'm going to be checking it scrutinizing it, correcting it when it is wrong, either agreeing to support what they want or disagreeing.
With a view to make things work or with a view to just be a critic?
No.
I think that's my question.
With a view to make things work. Because it is not about LEDAMA. It has never been about LEDAMA. It's about the 45 or 50 million Kenyans. Because as a senator, now I'm not only a senator for Narok County, but I'm a senator for the whole of Kenya. So really, some of the things that I'm going to be doing, and I'll be very honest with you, and I'm doing it now, is that, Article 226, subsection 5 of the Constitution states as follows, that if a bearer of an office misappropriates funds, that person is responsible whether in or out of office. So my role is to make sure that wherever the Auditor General is, we have governors who left office, who have been there for 10 years. Some of them are even our colleagues in the Senate now.
Yeah.
Just because you've come to the Senate doesn't mean that you don't
buddies.
account for what you spent. So really, for now, we are going to be sitting down with our accountants. We are going to be sitting down, creating other Gantt charts. And that some of them are very interesting, and I think KRA would love to have this conversation with me.
Yes.
Because sometimes when you sit down in the middle of the night and you're thinking about Kenyans, what comes to mind, it really sometimes shocks me.
Why?
Because if you want to follow the money trail, you've got to think like a thief to be able to catch that thief. Most county governments, most businesses, or rather most contracts that were awarded to companies of their friends, MCAs, their family members and stuff like that. That's very simple to follow. And I don't know why no one has ever bothered to follow. But this time around, Eric, I can tell you, we will create that Gantt chart. And even if we cannot be able to overturn things because they have already happened, I believe one of the people that I'm going to be sitting down with is going to have an interest in following up and saying, hey, okay, there's a relationship between here and here.
And this.
Okay, tell me, it's all right. That relationship, you already did it. But now tell me, you got 20B, but I haven't had my share of the 20B. Can I now have a share of my 20B?
Carry.
Everyone is going to be running helter-skelter. And I think if we are bold enough to be able to do that,
it's doable.
if we are bold enough, then we will not be saying we are broke as a country. We will not be saying money has been taken away from the exchequer. When I hear this argument that, we've gone to the treasury and we've only found 973 million, the question is, do you have a cabinet secretary in charge of treasury or not? Is that cabinet secretary still there?
How
Does he live in
much are you
space?
hoping to find?
Okay? It's not even a matter of how much you're hoping to find. But has that money been accounted for?
Yeah.
Can it be traced? Let me tell you, Eric, if I send you 5,000 shillings right now through your M-Pesa, and you go and withdraw that money, I can follow that money.
Yep.
And you can also follow where the source of my 5,000 came from.
That's true.
It's very simple.
That's true.
So there's nothing that doesn't have
There's
a
nothing
trace.
that doesn't have a trace. Final question in 3 minutes as we conclude the conversation today. Who's the majority in the National Assembly?
To be honest with you, from the coalition agreement that we have, and we all have to be disciplined enough to respect the rule of law. The Azimio coalition has a majority in the National Assembly. In the Senate, Kenya Kwanza has a majority. Because we cannot argue and say that Omutata belongs to either Kenya Kwanza or the Azimio coalition.
Yep.
He might decide to vote with
Whichever way he
whichever
wants,
way
but
he
he has
wants,
not signed into
but he
any.
hasn't signed.
Okay.
So in a way, I think we are 50. I think Kenya Kwanza might have an upper hand there in the Senate, but in the National Assembly, there might be other questions that might be asked.
Like
What do the standing orders say in terms of
a party.
the party vis-a-vis the coalition party? The second question which might be asked, and I think this is a question that the Speaker and the legal department in Parliament will have to be very, very, very independent in responding to that question, is whether does it matter if Azimio did not field any candidate as Azimio?
Yeah.
Is a definition of the coalition. Because Azimio, what these people don't understand is that Azimio is a political party, and also Azimio is a coalition of parties. If you look at Section 2A of the Political Parties Act, which we amended, it states that a political party can either be a political party or it can be a coalition
of parties.
Okay, so that 2A is what they're going to look into seriously, and looking at the standing orders to be able to demystify that.
Do they have the numbers, though?
Who?
Azimio. In the National Assembly.
Azimio has the numbers.
In terms of-
The question is,
Yeah.
and I think this is where you need to be very clear with, the question is, will the Benjamins dictate which side the river flows?
What's your guess?
I think the Benjamins will always dictate. But in this case, when it comes to the issue of, if it boils down to a pen and paper, I think Azimio will still have the day, because they will have, the coalition will be there. But to what effect? Finally, what I can predict is that my brothers, my aptis, my brothers from northern Kenya, who are, pastoralists like I am, who are not used to being dictated upon, will soon be finding their way back to Azimio, because I don't think they can be able to stomach being dictated upon. And I think you've got to give credit where credit is due. And, sometimes we're disorganized, and maybe it works on our part, but the other people might be organized. But anyway, Eric, thank you for having me.
Senator LEDAMA, KINA, thank you very much for joining us today.